and welcome to episode 18 of Live from Vaders Castle. You're joined today by one of your co-hosts, John Lee, and the other one, Dan McQuarrie. How are you, Dan?
Hello, I'm good. I've been excited for this episode for like a month. So I've been waiting and ready to go. So I've got plenty of things to say this episode. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a very exciting episode today. We'll be discussing the book for our book club this month. So obviously, over the last month, me and Dan have been reading The Rising Storm, the latest novel in the High Republic series. And we're going to be discussing it today on the podcast. So as you said, I'm very excited to get into the discussion and just see what we both thought about it.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think this is a book that a lot of people within the Star Wars community have been tiptoeing around talking about for the past month, because it is very much an Empire Strikes Back level of plot twists and big reveals. So we will be getting very deep in spoilers. We'll have a little overall thoughts first without spoilers, just before we go in, just in case we've got someone listening right now who needs to be persuaded to go pick up the book. We'll do our due diligence there. But yeah, very excited. I'm a big fan of this book, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, going off the last two High Republic books I've read, I was very curious about whether the level of greatness could be maintained, and I have to say I've not been disappointed. I think they've even managed to take it up a notch. So if you need persuading to read the book, that's what I've got to say. I mean, you need it. This is a book in your life that you need. I don't think I've read so many pages in like one sitting for quite a while. I was steaming through it one night. I think I must have read about 150 pages in one go. Just couldn't put it down.
Yeah, I was getting like little messages from John like as he was reading it when just sort of stuff happened, and then it just like kept on coming in, and he was like, "I've finished," and I was like, "Oh, Matt, you've really gone for it." But I mean, I was the same. My book arrived, I think, on a Tuesday, and it was finished by the Thursday. It was literally 2 days of just reading it flat out. I think this is not only my favorite High Republic novel so far, but just my favorite Star Wars novel, maybe even just favorite book, full stop, that I've ever read. I loved it. I've read it a second time, or listened to it, or went for the audiobook the second time, and it holds up just as much on the second time around. Holy shit, this book is good. It is really good. It's probably up there for me in like best Star Wars, one of my favorite Star Wars stories, when you include some of the films and stuff ever told. A really, really big fan of it. And I don't really know if I can give it a more glowing recommendation than that, to be honest. Cavan Scott has done a great job.
No, he really has. Yeah. I mean, I think apart from the graphic or the comic series that's coming out at the moment, this might be the first thing I've read of Cavan Scott's. So obviously I've been enjoying the comic series, I'm sure we've mentioned before on this podcast, but I hadn't really read any of his like proper literature. But getting into this, I might have to say I might have to look on Amazon and see what other stuff he's written, because if it's as high quality as this, oh baby.
Yeah, he's really good. He did the Dooku Jedi Lost sort of audio drama that you can either listen to as an audio drama or read as a script paperback, and that's really good. Dooku Jedi Lost. Obviously, yeah, his High Republic series is really good, and then he did a really good IDW comic series called Beware Vaders Castle, which is, I feel like we're going to have to go into detail about that one at some point in the future, just because it fits our brand. But it's like really interesting little sort of horror stories told within, the confines of Vaders Castle, which is really cool. But yeah, I think he's a great author, and I'm really excited to see what else he gets up to in the future with Star Wars. And it's a lot, because he's a very busy man.
Well, I hope so, yeah. I can't wait to see what more stuff he churns out. I mean, thankfully as well, me and you have both managed to get signed editions, which is obviously a very, very nice thing to add to the collection, especially because it's such a good book.
It eventually arrived, thanks to Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, I think your one took ages, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think mine wasn't too bad, but I think yours took an especially long amount of time.
Yeah, when I realised how long it was going to be, I went on Amazon Prime and next day delivered a normal hardback copy, because I just couldn't wait any longer. I was getting paranoid about spoilers on Twitter, so I was just like, I just need to get this book and read it, which I did, and luckily didn't have anything spoiled for me. But yeah, I think we'll wave our hands right now that from this point onwards in the book review discussion, we're going to get deep into spoilers. So if you haven't read it and you don't want anything spoiled, go away, buy the book, read it. If you haven't read Light of the Jedi first, read that one first, then read The Rising Storm. It'll be worth it. And then come back and listen to the rest of this great discussion. When I said go away there, that sounded really rude. I don't kindly leave so we don't spoil this great book for you. But yeah, we'll dive deep into spoilers from this point onwards. But I kind of the reason I went on that tangent is because when it came to the big plot twists, character deaths, etc., I was very shocked and surprised. So I'm glad I didn't get anything spoiled for me, because that was one of my big fears. And that's the reason why I read the book in 2 days, because I was just like, oh, Twitter. And there were so many people like tweeting Cavan Scott being like, you're a monster. And I was like, what has he done? Why is he a monster? What's happened? And then obviously we found out why. And I've been in pain ever since I read this book. I really have.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was the same, wasn't I? I mean, I messaged you as soon as I finished reading it and was just like, pain. Like, we had such a high and now I feel crushed. She's like, I feel like it's just how Star Wars goes these days. Like, I think I've said before on the podcast, like it's a good Star Wars story when like it's left you feeling emotional. And at the end of this book, closing the final page, I was definitely feeling emotional. So that ticks off that little check mark for me to show it's a good Star Wars story.
Yeah, I had the sad message from John of being like, we'll just get straight into it. The very sad message from John being like, oh yes, Bell and Loden back together again. And I was like, oh no, he doesn't know what's coming, does he? And then about 30 minutes later, I just had pain and suffering. And that basically sums up this book, to be honest. A lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and the death of a beloved character who we got back 30 pages earlier, Loden Greatstorm, literally on the final sentence of the book, is just him turning to dust. That was, there's a lot of incredible things that happened in this book that we'll go into detail on, but this is the lasting effect that this book has on you, is that the last thing you read is that Loden Greatstorm is dead after just coming back. So, pain and suffering. Sadness. Yeah,
big pain. It's like at the end of the book as well. So obviously you read that line and you're like, oh Christ. And then there's I think it's like a blank page, and then I saw through the page there was like loads of more writing, and I was like, oh okay. Like I know sometimes in books they do like the first few pages are like what's coming next, and I was like, well, the next book isn't coming out for a while, so I doubt they've done this, but I was hoping and praying that they'd be like the first chapter in the next book and it would start off on a happier note. But no, it was just acknowledgements. And I was like, all right, okay, that's just a waste of my time then. I got my hopes up when I did.
Acknowledgements. Yeah. I think, let's talk about Loden here, because this is probably a good place to start, seeing it's, genuinely this death really, really got to me, because coming out of Light of the Jedi, I loved Loden and Bell, like that relationship. I absolutely loved it. All the stuff of him, pushing Bell from high places and Bell learning to land, all of that stuff I absolutely loved. But Loden himself is just such a cool Jedi. He was so powerful, but good and, strong with the light side of the Force and everything you'd love to see. And then obviously with that book ending with Marchion Ro capturing him, leaving him in torture, I was like, oh no. I'm hoping that The Rising Storm is going to be the rescuing Loden Greatstorm book. And then to, have the book start a year later with him nowhere to be seen for the first, 200 pages of the book, I was like, have they just forgotten about our boy? And then when I got to that chapter in like the middle of the book, and it was like, Loden's alive still. You've been horrifically tortured, but he's still alive. I was like, oh, thank God. I was like, he is going to be saved. I'm so happy. And then it happened, and he escaped, and him and Bell were just back together again, master and apprentice. And there was just so much heartwarming dialogue, and I was loving it. And then, then he's dead. to get our hopes up like that and then crush them by the end of the book. What an emotional roller coaster that was. Rest in peace, Lone Greatstorm. He was the best of us.
He was, and I think the point of like why it was such an emotional thing is obviously because he was such a beloved character from the first book. But I just think throughout the book, like Belle's story, I think was just like so well told, and like his emotional side, I think was so well told. And there was parts when like Belle would like reminisce about Loden, or like he'd like imagine what Loden was saying to him and stuff. So I think it was all that combined with like the love we already have for the character, and like the fact that it was so well written throughout the entire book really stacked up to the emotional I don't know what, but the emotional gut punch that it was at the end. I think without the brilliant writing throughout the book, through Belle's like thoughts and feelings, I don't think it would have hit quite as hard. Because obviously we experience Loden's death like pretty much like, I know it's not from Belle's point of view, but like he's such an important part of like describing almost like the atmosphere at the time.
Yeah,
which is why I feel like you're reading it and like at first you think that Belle's dead or something, like the way his emotions are like Belle's like dying, the way his emotions are like written out on the page.
Yeah, because he has the vision that he has. Yeah, you think that it's Belle, and I genuinely thought it was Belle. Because when, I clocked onto the fact because of the way that people were talking about the book that it was probably ending on a death, or at least there was going to be a big death or something. And I genuinely was like, oh no, Belle's dead. I was like, I can't believe this. Because obviously it switches from like Belle's POV to Stellan's right at the end. And then almost seeing it through Stellan's eyes instead of Belle's almost made it even more painful, because literally we just see Belle like just rolling on the floor crying is basically the description. And then obviously Loden there frozen in stone. I just think that, little twist there, I did not expect it to be Loden after everything that happened. And I mean, talk about hard life for Belle. I mean, he lost his master who he thought the world of, kind of believed he was still alive, but then had to suppress that feeling, finally found out he was still alive. They were reunited for about 20 minutes and then he died in front of him. I mean, how Belle's going to be in the next book, I have no idea, because that poor boy has been through the worst experience possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to sideline this into like my thoughts about how like the High Republic changes from like how we know the Jedi at the moment, and we'll link back into it later, I'm sure. But then how they are in like the prequel series, is because like in the prequel series, the Jedi are very like obviously there's like no attachments, and like Yoda is very much like attachments lead to this, that lead to that, lead to this, to like the lead to the dark side. And ever since reading this book, I've been like, there's got to be something, or like there's got to be lots of different things that are adding up to, obviously by the time Yoda gets to that point where he realizes that like, okay, no more attachments. Because I think in this book and the one before, like the Jedi are given a bit more like free reign to do what they want. Like they have the rules of the Jedi Order that are fairly similar to the prequels, but they're a bit more like loosely interpreted. And I feel like what's going to happen in this next book? So I feel like obviously there's a big thing about attachments with like some of the other characters, but I think specifically with like Belle, I reckon like there's something's going to happen in the next book, and he's going to like go off the edge maybe, and that's going to be like gets a little ball rolling in Yoda's head. That's like, all right, we need stricter rules here, because Yoda's the only one that survives between like now and the High Republic and the prequels, and he's the one that we see in the prequels being like really hot on like Anakin and his attachments and stuff.
Yeah,
I think this is like I think this is one of the catalysts that's really getting like driving how we see the Jedi Order in like the prequels trilogy.
Yeah, I do think that amongst some of the stuff going on where Elzar and some of our other characters, I definitely can see sort of some of those threads coming together. But I don't know, and I just what Belle's going to be going through now, I imagine it's going to be very difficult. I'm hoping, because it's more in this friendlier time in the Jedi Order's history, I'm hoping that the other Jedi are there to support him, and they're not just going to leave him alone, because I feel like if Belle's left on his own, he's probably could end up turning to the dark side just through pure grief. And I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that they sort of support him for it. I think Stellan seems to sort of have taken a liking to him in this book, so I sort of hope Stellan's there to sort of guide him a little bit and support him. But yeah, I think the reason why it hits so hard is because Loden Greatstorm was tortured for a year, literally an entire year. Like the book was saying that he wasn't allowed to sleep. It was like anytime he started to doze off, they like injected him with something that woke him up again. He had both his leku chopped off him. He was like getting constantly tortured with like music, and the fact that Loden was able to survive that amount of torture for a year without turning to the darkness one single bit shows that he is literally the greatest of the Jedi. Like, there is a line earlier on when Stellan, I think it's Stellan who says like Loden was the best of us, in comforting Bell. I think it was Stellan, when they thought Loden was dead. But that just really goes to prove like the amount that Loden goes through in that year, and he's still pure at the end of it. He really is like the best of the Order, and the fact that he dies at the end of this book just really pulls away some of the hope that you've got about the way that the Jedi might handle this current situation that they're in. Because if someone like Loden, who's so good and pure, is dead, I mean, who are they left with, really? They're left with your sort of more controversial characters who are a little bit less pure than Loden. And so I do think, you can sort of see where some of these cracks are starting to appear. But yeah, it's difficult to put into words the just insane amount of sadness felt by the end of this book.
Yeah, I mean, from like a creative point of view and like storytelling, I get why they've done it. You need to set up the big villain and like make him like a really big threat. And like the only way you're going to do that is by killing like one of your favorite characters or like one of like the main characters. But it still doesn't make it hurt any less.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely sold me on Markion Ro as a villain. I mean, I was already sold after Light of the Jedi, but this is just like cemented him. He is a twisted, evil, nasty man who deserves to get his, just desserts, because how dare he? And this scary leveler thing, which we don't even know what it is yet, and I'm sure we'll talk about a bit more. Damn it all. How dare they?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole book as a whole, I mean, it started off, I mean, Light of the Jedi started off like instantly, it was like straight action with the whole like legacy run like crashing, and that was like boom, action straight away. And then I feel like, it wasn't long into this book as well, until like before like the Nile were back and like the action was kicking off again. So I think the whole book has definitely been paced really well, like in a way to like get you even more terrified of the villains, and like as the book was closing in that something big was going to happen, and obviously something did. So I think they're doing really well setting up these villains. And we said when we reviewed the last book, like the Jedi, that they needed something that went up against the Jedi and was like, oh, okay, this is going to be a bit of a challenge for them. And then they've just taken that to the next level. Like the level or whatever this thing's just killed a Jedi, like dead in its tracks without even trying. Like,
yeah, and made both Bell and Elzar just completely like stricken in fear, I guess is the sort of the only way to describe it. Like it clearly has some sort of effect on the Jedi, which sort of make them like lose their connection to the Force or just be consumed by fear. Like because the Elzar like crashed his ship at the end because of sort of the overpowering sort of visions and fear that he was given. And the book, I think the actual last sentence of the book is, for the first time in a long time, Stellan Gios felt afraid. So I think that was like the actual last line. I think the line previous was Loden dying. But clearly, I mean, the thing that the Jedi are really dealing with here is being afraid. They're afraid of the Nile. This leveler seems to have the power to just make them afraid. And if there's one thing that we've learned is that fear leads to the dark side. So I think this is sort of the big challenge that the Jedi are being forced in this era. It's not necessarily, you know, dealing with the Sith and, you know, all this sort of stuff. It's dealing with an enemy that makes them genuinely afraid, both because of the Nile's sort of savagery and unpredictability that we see in the Republic Fair, but then also with this leveler, which seems to just make them consumed by fear. Sort of my interpretation of it.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because it's like, you know, I suppose whatever this thing, creature, force, I don't actually know, it's not actually clear what it is. It's kind of like the shark in Jaws. We haven't quite seen it yet. The anticipation is building. But yeah, I feel like the idea of Mark and Rose is just to take on or wipe out as many Jedi as possible. So I feel like maybe if this thing can only kill one at a time, the other like side goal of it is to just make the Jedi useless by striking them down with fear, or like turning them to the dark side so they'll turn on each other. Like I feel like this thing has caused such like a big ruckus within the Jedi Order. Like it's just such, the mystery behind it is almost as frightening as like what it's actually shown to be doing on page already.
Yeah, and again, we don't really know what it looks like. We like some of the descriptions was it that it was like, you know, like a beast. It's like primordial, and you know, it was sort of. So I'm almost. I know this is probably incorrect. Almost like picturing that it looks a bit like the Balrog from Lord of the Rings, maybe just 10 foot tall instead of 50 foot tall. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong there, but something sort of beastly, and I think almost like semi ghost like but semi physical. I'm not sure what I'm picturing, but something a bit like that, of just some like terrifying beast, but also is it sort of more metaphysical? Is it not actually like a, well, I mean, it was frozen in ice, so I guess they had to defrost something. So no, who knows? And I'm sure we're going to find out eventually. I'd like a picture one day. But yeah, the leveler is definitely a scary concept, and what Markion Rose going to do with it for the rest of this era does have me genuinely scared, because I have a new favourite character, and his name's Elzar Mann, and he's still alive at the moment. And you know, I don't trust these writers to let him live and let him have a happy ending. So, you know, someone protect him, please.
Yeah, I think it was nice actually as well in this book that I'd say most of the story. I'm going to say like, I think it was split up between like 3 or 4 characters between most of the book, I think. But I think Elzar got the majority of like the page time. Between him and Bell, I think, had the most. And I think he had some of the most, interesting character developments throughout the book, just his character. And then obviously one of the most interesting takes on how we've seen Jedis act and behave in all of Star Wars, I think. One of the most unique Jedis I think we've ever come across.
Yeah, I thought this book was very interesting, and I think this is probably what they're going to do with the era as a whole, is that, you know, different books sort of focus on different characters. Like Light of the Jedi, Elzar was present, but it was much more of a focus on Avar Kriss, obviously Bell Loden. I mean, who else had a big presence in Light of the Jedi? You know, like Skier. So, you know, there were different Jedis who sort of had more of a focus, whereas in this book, it was Elzar, Stellan, Bell, and then I guess Ty Yorick as well. But like Elzar had much more of a focus in this book. And after the first book, I was like, yeah, he seems like a cool Jedi. Like, he's a bit of a rogue. You know, he does what he wants. I like that. He's clearly got a bit of a history with Avar, and how's that going to play out? But now this book just completely changed my perspective on the Jedi and, you know, everything about them. I mean, Elzar has already jumped to being one of my favorite sort of Jedi characters ever. I loved him in this book. Just the amount of like relatable human stuff that he dealt with, you know, like from the just being a man who doesn't ask for help when he needs help sort of aspect of his character, to the being a Jedi who has a one night stand, and then the girl he has a one night stand with just says, yeah, it was just was just one night, would you want to, him losing control of, tapping into the dark side and then realizing it and, trying to fix that. There was just so much going on with his character that was, almost relatable in this big sort of fantastical book, as sort of really was like the emotional sort of anchor for me in this book. And I just really, really felt what Elzar was feeling in this book. And he's a badass, obviously. He's a cool Jedi with a blue lightsaber who swings about and, does good action. But also I just felt he was the real sort of like, him and Bell sort of were like the real emotional core of the book. And yeah, I could talk about Elzar for a long time, but everything. He broke the rules. he broke the rules. He did the dirty with the Valo lady, and then he commented on the fact that Jedi robes take a long time to take off. Everything was just spot on with Elzar. It was really good.
Yeah, it was a shock to say the least reading that on the page. I feel like it was coming, but I was like, there was flirtation hints between him and what was that character's name?
Samira.
Samira, that's it. Yeah, but I was like, oh, they'll never go there. Like, he's a Jedi. He'll say no. He'll be wise. No, he's like, he does what he wants. And then, yeah, I think again, as you were saying, like the interesting points of his character is like how he lets like those emotions build up, and instead of just asking for help, it ends up erupting in like a big dark side force act, which just like yeets an island, a ship. What I find really interesting is like across like the whole planet, all the Jedi, like they all knew he did it, or like someone did it.
Yeah,
like they all sensed it straight away, and then he had to like reconcile with that, and eventually he asked for help.
Which I liked. I really like that scene where he just straight up just said to Stellan, like, I touched into the dark side. Like I stopped myself doing it again, but I just need help. And I just thought it was such a powerful scene because you could tell that it was definitely a commentary on the modern day man never asking for help, which I thought was pretty accurate, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think what this book did well is throughout the whole thing is, I think it does it well with Bell and like his new master talking about like the death of Loden, and it's like you don't have to. It's not like you're shutting yourself away from these emotions. Like you're allowed to feel like grief and sadness and stuff, but you got to keep it in check. Like you can't let it rule you, which I think is that I think that's maybe what some of the Jedi in like the prequel era were missing when it came to like Anakin. It seemed to be more like you can't do this, you can't do that. It was almost like banned. And I think if Anakin had felt he was able to be like, oh, I need help, like, because there's times in the Clone Wars where he's like borderline dark side, and he's been a bit savage with, committing some war crimes. If he'd like had the maturity or something to like look inside himself and then go to like Obi-Wan or someone was like, I need help. How much more different would the Star Wars universe be that we know? So
yeah, exactly.
I think it was nice to see.
Yeah, and then even in sort of Revenge of the Sith, when he sort of does ask for help, when he's having these visions of someone he knows dying, like Yoda's just sort of like, meditate on it, shut it off. And I think what this book is trying to say, and I think what the whole High Republic is trying to say, is that it's more about like a balance of just like, like we're human beings or aliens, we're living beings, we're going to feel things, but we just can't let those feelings consume us. And I just think that was it's a way more sensible way of looking at emotion and attachment and all the stuff that, is so forbidden in the prequel era. And you can really see why someone like Anakin would turn to the dark side when he literally doesn't have a support circle. Whereas, with Belle and Indira sort of at the beginning, with like Belle being upset about Loden and her being like, yeah, I am as well. Like, we're allowed to be sad. We just can't let that sadness take over. And, there's an interesting line in Race to Crash Point Tower, which is the junior novel, which is about like, attachment and like, you know, you're allowed to like people, you're allowed to be fond of people, you just can't let that attachment overtake you. It's about a balance between the two. I just think that for me personally I connect with that way more than I connect with the sort of attachment is forbidden thing. So seeing these sort of discussions within the Jedi Order, I think is so much, it's healthier clearly, and it's really good. And I think Elzar is a perfect example of someone a bit like Anakin that with the wrong people around him could very easily end up turning to the dark side. But I don't think that was ever going to happen to Elzar, because I think he as a character is someone who's struggling, but he has recognized his struggle and has asked for help. And I almost hope in the next book that Elzar and Stellan are on some sort of like Jedi retreat somewhere where they're just sort of meditating and talking about their feelings whilst like drinking or something. Because I think that's probably what they both need as well. I think Stellan clearly has bottled quite a lot of stuff up as well, you know, to do with like him grieving for his master who's just died, and, you know, him being this figurehead within the Order that he doesn't really want to be. And I think Stellan's clearly bottling quite a lot of stuff up as well. So I think, and Elzar can clearly see it in Stellan because of how close their friendship is, which is a great friendship, by the way. So yeah, I do think that the way that the High Republic is sort of tackling some of these big conversation points is not only just like massively refreshing, but just like really, really interesting. And one of the things I'm loving about this era the most.
Yeah, I mean, it just helps to make the characters like more relatable. Because I mean, you know, the character we all related to, and that all like the character moments we all relate to and love the most with like the prequel characters. You know, it's like it's obviously Obi-Wan and Anakin, but Anakin because you know he's relatable. You know, with these struggles, and you know, and everyone loves at the moments of Obi-Wan where he's like, you know, everyone loves him and who's that Chancellor that he, you know, fell in love with for a bit in the before
Duchess
the prequels.
Satine, yeah.
Duchess Satine, yeah, that's it. You know, everyone clings on to those things about those characters, or like hypes them things out because it just makes them more relatable. So I think, yeah, in the High Republic, having the characters show their emotional sides and discuss it and stuff like that. I mean, like one of my favorite moments in the book is when they think Chancellor So's died, and you know, and you get to see like a Jedi's like break down, and like it's written in the book. You know, he cries, he just weeps, holding her body. And I think that's stuff we don't genuinely get to see through like with like the eyes of the Jedi or stuff like that, because you know you get like the emotional ones who we all love, and then you get like the ones that just appear to be like robots, and they're the ones that we always just like, oh, he's a bit of a dick. So it does make them more relatable, and it helps us build that relationship with the characters.
That was such a powerful moment. But like the fact that not only was Stellan like cradling her in her arms, like crying, but that was being filmed and like put over the entire galaxy, and everyone was just seeing this like Jedi cry. And I just think that it's almost like a really meta moment, because it's like the galaxy's seeing it for probably the first time, but then we're kind of seeing it as readers as well, of like, whoa, like the Jedi like cry and they get sad over people dying. That's really strange. We'd never seen that before. Because I mean, you know, you said it yourself, like the characters that we really related to was always like Luke Skywalker, for example, because he was emotional, he was impulsive, he was sad about things, he was excited about things, he sometimes got a little too, connected, attached. All the things that we loved about Luke was the things that normal human beings deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then, a lot of the prequel era Jedi, and I'd argue Obi-Wan Kenobi a lot of the time. Like, there's a lot of times when Obi-Wan does get a little bit more relatable, but there's a lot of the time that he's just, he's awesome and he's the best Jedi ever. But like, there's a lot of the time that you're just like, is there anything going on inside that head of yours apart from just like being a good Jedi? Like, do you feel anything? And I think that there is times when he's just completely unrelatable. And seeing this moment with like Stellan, who I feel like Stellan is sort of like the Obi-Wan of this era. I mean, in the audiobook, he literally sounds like Obi-Wan, but just his description as a character, he feels like sort of the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this era. Seeing him just like break down in tears over the apparent death, not actual death, but apparent death of the Chancellor, I just thought was a really, really powerful moment, and one of the best moments in the book. I agree.
Yeah, and I mean, even when it cuts to like Bell sometimes, and I think there's points in the book where like he was thinking about like Loden, and like he was getting like tears in his eyes, or I mean, like some of my favorite moments is when he's talking about how in like the Jedi, it wasn't until like he realized that what a Jedi's purpose is, and that is to like save others and like help others. It's that attachment to like people in general. I think really helped him discover who he is as a Jedi. So I think in the book, there was times when he was, willing to lay his life down to save others and stuff, and it's that sort of like attachment to just not a specific thing, but an attachment to like just people in general and lives in general that I think came across really well. And obviously then he's got his little friend Ember, who he's obviously got quite a close attachment with.
Oh, I love Ember.
And yeah, it is a female dog, isn't it?
Yes.
Or is it a guy?
Yeah, he's always like,
I think it's a girl dog. Yeah. Like she's great, and obviously I feel like again that would be something that in like the prequel era Jedi Order would be like heavily frowned upon, and probably he would have had to give her up.
Yeah, Anakin would not have been allowed a pet dog.
No, and this time like they're fine with it, and they're like, well, as long as you don't, I don't know, do something stupid about it, like if someone killed Ember and then he'd go on like a dark side fueled rampage, as long as he doesn't do that, like everyone's like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I do think you raise an interesting point. It's really something that I think Bell was great for in this book, with him rescuing the people off the is it the Innovator, the big flagship that they've built. Yeah. Like him literally laying his life down to save people. And I think one of the things that is so important to the Jedi is that they're the protectors of, of life, because the light lives within people. Life is light. And, they're supposed to be the protectors of that. And, their whole slogan in the High Republic is for light and life. So, when it's not an attachment issue for you to turn around and be like, yes, I'm going to save this human being because they're a person and they deserve to live. That's not something that should be frowned upon. That is basically the job of a Jedi, and Bell does it so many times. And see a lot of loads of the other characters are saving lives, but it's in Bell's chapters there's a lot of moments where there's lines like Bell knew what he needed to do, like he trusted in the Force, and there were moments where they'd say, oh, but you're going to die, and he's like, no, I trust in the Force, I know that this is what I'm supposed to do and stuff like that. And I just thought those moments were so powerful, and really getting in touch with what the Jedi are supposed to be, these protectors, these people who they are there to save people's lives and to keep them safe. And I think Bell represented that so well. And he's just such a lovable character, Bell. I really like his character, and particularly his relationship with Ember. The scene when he gets harpooned and he's nearly dying, and his connection to Ember through the Force is sort of like what he uses to like sort of like keep himself alive, basically. And it's listening to her barking and sort of using that as a way to keep on going and to fuel himself. That was a really powerful scene. So yeah, that's why I worry for Bell, because I find myself really, really loving him in this book, and I am worried about him. But yeah, some really great stuff happening there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that scene is again just one of those ones, or like when he gets harpooned, that's like you build it up to be like, oh yeah, hooray, and then like the next line is like, wow, gut punch, because it was like he was reminiscing about fighting training droids with Loden, and how he's blindfolded, so using the Force to basically just like fight against the droids, and he's reminiscing about that while dodging his way through what are they called, scavenger droids, something.
Scavenger.
Yeah, they like destroy a ship when they like the ones in they remind me of the ones in the beginning of the Revenge of the Sith, and like they latch on to like Anakin and Obi-Wan's ship. I'm assuming it's something similar to that.
Buzz droids.
Oh no, Anakin. Yeah, I'm assuming there's something similar to that. But like while reminiscing about his training, he gets all the way through. He manages to get past them to then take on the big Nile ship, and you're like, oh sweet, like he's there, he's done it. Bam, harpoons through the gut, and you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
what is wrong with you, Cavan?
I mean, let's just do a little bit of a discussion sort of about like the the sort of the structure of this book, because like I feel like this book was very much just like building up good news and then just a gut punch of like something bad happening and then just like sort of some good stuff and then another gut punch, and it was just almost just like constantly getting worse and worse and worse and worse, because obviously the book opens up with Elzar sort of like he goes to Ashla and he's trying to get back in touch with this vision that he had at the end of Light of a Jedi, and you know he's seeing all these people dying and he's like, right, I need to go to Valo, like that's what I need to do. And then sort of after that you get sort of a couple, like we get some nice scenes, you know, we get Bell and Indira sort of at the Cyclor shipyards, and that seems to be going all right over there. And we meet this really interesting new character called Udi Dis, who is hanging out with Marchion Ro. He's a pilot for him, but he's like part of a race of aliens who are kind of force sensitive and they can use it for navigation. And so we get to know Udi, and he becomes quite like a likable anti-hero, even though he's sort of hanging out with Marchion Ro. And then, you know, he gets kicked in the face to death by Marchion Ro, you know, a couple chapters in. And obviously, yeah, all the build up to the Republic Fair, and we're constantly being told, oh yeah, it's going to be fine. All of them completely underestimating the Nile. And then, you know, I was just reading it like, you guys are idiots. Like the Nile are going to just invade you. But I never expected it to be like as intense as it was. And then they just appear out of nowhere and just completely destroy everything. And then, you know, you think that's getting better. And then the next bad thing happens. And it's just like one thing after another of just like, this is a slog. I mean, it's not a slog to read. It's like a really quick read because they're nice small chapters and you just keep on going. But a slog in terms of an emotional slog, because it's just like a gut punch after gut punch. I don't know what you thought about sort of the overall structure of the book, but yeah, that was definitely how I was feeling with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably go back and listen to the audiobook at some point, just like while I'm driving to and from work. But I'm just, when I re-listen to it, I'm definitely going to try and take note of like a point where you think the character succeeds and then literally the next line it all comes crashing down, because I think it happens at least 4 or 5 times across the book. Like one of them that just sprung to mind is when I think it's Elzar, I think, throws his lightsaber while one of the Niles like grappling towards the Chancellor to like assassinate her, and he manages to cut her like grapple cord. And you think, all right, sweet, like she's safe. And then just a bomb goes off, like right in front of them all.
Yeah.
Which then leads to the scene of where we think the Chancellor's dead.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's another moment where it's like, Christ alive, like we think that we're all good and Gucci, and then like literally like the next line, 2 lines down, it all goes horribly wrong again.
Yeah.
There must be at least 4 or 5 times in this book where they do that.
Yeah, and I think there's another time with Elzar as well where like he sort of reconciled what's just happened with the island, and he's like, right, I'm gonna put this right. You know, this is my chance now to save lives. And then he just gets thumped in the head by Ty Yorick, and then the chapter just ends. So it's like the book is just physically smacking you around the face anytime that you have a smile because something good has happened.
Yeah, and then I think there is one point in the book, I remember thinking this, I actually can't remember what it is, but like something good happens and I was like on the edge of my seat, like I didn't want to turn the page. I was like, this is just going to go downhill. But it thankfully didn't at that point in the book. But I was like, you've set me up. You set me up about 3 times now to be lifted up and then disappointed. And this time you just lift me up and I can't actually enjoy it because I'm like so worried about what's going to happen next.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the book does that so well that it really is just like a roller coaster the entire way. And as I said, like the short chapters, I think, particularly in like the action scenes in the Republic Fair, just makes it so like you get to the end of a chapter and it's like, well, I mean, I may as well just keep on going. And then it's just like a non-stop sort of, you know, you either get to the end of the chapter and you're like, well, shit, I'm sad. Or you get to the end of one and you're like, oh, this is going really well. Let's see what happens next. And then it inevitably goes worse in the next one. And I mean, there's a whole sort of like 100-page segment in the book where it's just Stellan just getting his ass beat, just like chapter after chapter, you know, and he's fighting the sort of Trandoshan Nile and he's just getting his face just pummeled. And then Lorna D comes out of nowhere and, you know, beats him up as well. And then the Chancellor gets blown up and, like Stellan has a rough time of it trying to protect like the Chancellor and the Togruta Queen as well. So it really is just like a constant roller coaster of highs and lows, but predominantly lows, which I think as like a middle chapter, because this is like the middle chapter of like the first phase of the High Republic, because the next book will be sort of the final book of this phase. I think as a middle chapter, it definitely takes the Empire Strikes Back style of storytelling of just like it just doesn't really end well for anyone. And you have to wait until the next one for stuff to actually start going well again. I mean, obviously they save the day in terms of the Republic Fair, but a lot of people have already died, and the Nile have already made quite a damaging, stamp on the galaxy, and it's tough. It's tough to read.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and as I said earlier, like this book has done so well to really make the Nile even more of like an immediate threat to the Jedi than they did in Light of the Jedi. I mean, in that book, it was like this is like something the Jedi's never faced before, with like just their hyperspace abilities, and you think, wow, that's like obviously such a severe threat. And then in this book, they pose such a threat, and they just for the pure fact that they just kill so many people like relentlessly just for like no reason, which I think obviously goes so far against the Jedi's way of like obviously light and life, as you said, even to the point where like some Jedi in their like in the monologues and stuff are like saddened at the fact they have to kill the Nile just because of the absolute brutality of what they're doing. So I think in the first book it was set up like really well of like why their abilities and like what they can do is like a threat to the Jedi. And I think in this book they really went in on just like the complete opposite nature that they are, and how like just their mere presence is detriment to the Jedi way and the Jedi way of life. The fact that you got the Jedi's feeling upset about having to kill psychopaths.
Yeah, and
like, even when they win, they're losing because they've taken lives.
Keep coming and coming and coming, and they use the war cloud and the music to like rob them of their senses, and they take these drugs so that they just get back up again after being beaten to the floor and having arms chopped off by lightsabers. I mean, the Nile were just brutal. Well, I tell you what, the thing that I loved about the Nile the most in this book, I think the reason why this book stands so above other books, is that it wasn't just Marchion Ro, who's like a really interesting, complex villain. He's brilliant, but just the Nile themselves are terrifying. They're threatening, but because we see the side of the Nile that the Jedi don't, which is like the infighting within sort of the ranks, like Pan Eta, he's a wild card, isn't he? Because this whole book he was wanting to challenge Marchion Ro's authority. He wants to do everything his way. He just wants to go and destroy everything and cause chaos. And then you've sort of got Lorna D, who we don't really know whose side she's playing from one page to the next, and obviously she sends Pan Eta off to his death at the end of the book when she pretends that they're all going to go and attack the Cyclor shipyards, and just sends him practically on his own. And obviously he survives by escaping and killing the rest of his Tempest. And then you've got little Zetar in his mech suit, who's just sort of getting involved with everything as well. I think the infighting amongst the Nile makes them so much more interesting characters, because they have all this power, but they almost have so much power that they can't agree how to use it amongst themselves. And clearly Marchion sees that as a weakness of the Nile, which is why he's trying to seize absolute control himself. But the constant threats that he's got from Pan, from Lorna, from keeping the Nile sort of in line, I just think made them even more interesting as characters. And I particularly loved the scene when, Pan is really challenging Marchion, like almost to the point of killing him. And then Marchion just comes out and does a hell of a speech, and he's just chanting like "Death to the Chancellor, death to So," and all the Nile were like, "Yes, we love this. This is what we should do." And that was Markion really putting his boot down, being like, "No, the Nile's mine, not you, Pan, you big ugly bastard." So yeah, I loved that aspect of it, and we saw it really, really deep in this book, particularly with Pan. I thought it was a really, really interesting character and a good foil for Markion as a leader in the Nile. And I just thought by the end of the book, Markion is even more of a terrifying villain because he's been through all of these sort of leadership challenges basically in this book. I don't know what you thought of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was moments in the book where I actually thought, especially during that scene, just for Markion's big speech, that I thought the Nile were actually going to turn on him, just because he's a bit philosophical. Maybe is the word I'm looking for. He dreams big, while the Nile were just like, I want to rape, pillage, and do whatever I want right now. I don't care about your big schemes.
Yeah, he's about long-term plans, and they just want like chaos, chaos, chaos. And he's obviously not a massive physical presence either, like Pan is. He's more of a thinker. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean the Nile remind me of like the psychos from like Borderlands. They're just nuts, and they'll just do whatever that gets them the easiest and quickest way to get them going out and blowing things up. Pretty much is just they'll just join whoever that is. So I did think they were going to side with Pan, just because I thought Pan did a good job of making Markion look a bit weak in front of the Nile. We know that he's quite an imposing threat, obviously with, he's taken out Loden, and obviously at the end of the book, we definitely know he's like an imposing threat. But I think from like the Nile's point of view, like if you're just like a regular like Storm, is it Storm the lowest rank? Or Cloud or whatever? If
Strike is the lowest.
Strike. Yeah, if you're just like a regular Strike, are you going to be like, oh, I want to follow Markion to like his big grand plan, or are you going to be like, no, I'm going to go join Pan and blow up Coruscant?
Yeah.
Even if I die trying.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously Markion has a lot of lines about, you're failing to see the bigger picture, Pan, and I think, Markion's right in so many senses because, he's saying that like, you need to appreciate that the Jedi are strong as hell. Like, we can go and blow up a fair, and we can make ships crash in hyperspace, and we can do all this stuff, but on a one-to-one on a battlefield, with the Jedi, they're not going to win. So they need to, think tactically, like, blocking all their communications, using the war cloud, bombarding from the skies, jumping out of hyperspace above the city instead of in space where the defenses are. All these things that the Nile can do, that Markion gets them to do to win. He does that because he rightly doesn't underestimate the Republic or the Jedi, whereas I feel like Pan and Lorna and all the others are just very much like, yeah, we're strong, we'll do whatever we want. And I think that's why Markion is ultimately going to win out in terms of his control over the Nile, because he does see the bigger picture, and he sees both the power that the Nile has, but also the way that he needs to use it so that they don't just get beat every time. Because I mean, if Pan was in charge, they would just get beat every single time, no question asked.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like the Nile, obviously, they went to the fair and caused loads of havoc. But how many Jedi were there? Like, not many. Like, it wasn't until the reinforcements showed up that the Nile really like ran off. But like even the Jedi that was there, it was like holding their own. There wasn't like a handful. I think Markion says at one point, like, we're starting a war here, and they're not going to win a war against the Jedi unless they have like some sort of, grand master scheme. If they just throw numbers at the Jedi, they're not going to win. Like you might kill
you could just
a good amount, but you're never going to win.
Put all Berlin in a room with any of them, he's beating them all up,
Yeah, I mean, that man, some of the fight scenes that was written in the book with him is unbelievable. Got some of the best action in the entire book sometimes at points.
Yeah, I feel like we just need to take a very sudden Oberlin segue right here, because I absolutely loved the fight scene with Oberlin. Like the fact that he was just giving Lorna D a history lecture whilst having a scrap with a lightsaber, and then the fact that, you know, because he's an Ugor and he's basically just living jelly. He just, what did he do to the sort of big scorpion Donnie? He basically just encased them in jelly, like his own body. Oh,
yeah, because didn't he like broke his like containment suit?
Yeah,
and obviously like they were like the Nile, whoever he was fighting was like, oh sweet, like we've won this, and then yeah, he just like encases him in his own jelly because that's what his actual body is like, and it's like you're never gonna beat this man. Like even if you break the suit, he's gonna 1v1 you as a blob of jelly.
Yeah, but all he cares about is history. He's a very simple man of simple pleasures. He likes history. He's an archivist. He appreciates good artifacts, and even in a fight, he's still going to explain to you exactly how important that artifact is, which I thought was so funny. It really was one of my favourite parts of the book. Everything with Oberlin.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well because he was written in. It started off, you know, he first met him when Elzar thought Avar Kriss was going to be getting off the ship, and Orba walked off, and obviously Elzar was like extremely disappointed, and he kind of just got the vibe that it was like, oh, it's like the loser, like nerdy, like yeah, it's like a librarian sort of fella who just arrived, and yeah, obviously like half the book in, just then we find out that the man is like one of the most badass fighters in the Jedi Order. Like, yeah, can just take on as many Niles he wants while sprouting off a lecture full of information.
Yeah,
I was like, Christ alive, who is this man?
Yeah, I can't wait to see more of Oberlin in like whether it's the comics or the books and stuff, because he was a really unique and interesting character, and he has appeared. He appeared briefly in one of the comics that I read like 2 days before I started the book. And it was just a guy in a hazmat suit, basically. And I was like, who on earth is this Donnie? And then obviously I find out who he properly is in this book. And he's just like walking jelly. And I'm like, I've got a lot of respect for for this Ugor right here. I'm definitely on Oberlin's team if we're picking sides here.
Yeah, I mean, he's a character that went literally from like 0 to 100 in the space of like 2 pages. And it was unbelievable to see.
Yeah, he was definitely like the Porter Engle of this book, because in Light of the Jedi, Porter Engle was just like serving soup and just being like a really friendly chef. And then there was just that mad scene on El Frono when he just murks all the Nile. And sort of in this book, it was like Oberlin was the guy that you were like underestimating, and then he just showed his true power. I mean, obviously, Porter Engle was again being a beast in this book as well. Him just like riding on the back of Indira Stokes' Vector, which was awesome. But I just love when they do that with characters, when they make you like really underestimate them, and then just they prove themselves very quickly to be an absolute badass, even if they are like a history teacher.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we need like a Battlefield 3 with like a High Republic DLC, so I can go around and work people as Oberlin. That is what I need in life.
Oh yeah, I was thinking I want a Jedi Fallen Order, just like a single player Jedi game where I just play as Oberlin the entire time. And just one of the buttons that you mash,
like an Indiana Jones Jedi miss.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the buttons you mash is just like history lecture, and you just mash the button, and he just keeps on giving lectures whilst you're fighting. Like doubles the amount of damage you do because you're giving a history lecture. But yeah, I agree. Battlefront 3 just needs to be High Republic Jedi only, because there's just so many weird ones that they can throw in there.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this, I think, talking about, you know, the comics and the book and the last couple books in the past, but the amount of the variety of Jedi that we've got in like this era of Star Wars is just unbelievable. It's just so good. I mean, we've got Oberlin, we've got Bell, we've got Loden, Elzar, Avar, Skier. You know, like the sheer variety is just there's something for everyone.
Yeah, Porter.
Like,
I love Porter Engle.
Yeah, he's class.
There was that really funny scene when like Bell was, I think when he seen like Buriaga and all of that, and they were talking, and then he just says something like really blunt about the fact Loden's dead, and he didn't do it in like a mean way. I can't even remember exactly what he said. He just said something like so blunt, and they all just looked at him, and then Bell was like, "It's fine." But he just comes across as that like lovable guy who just doesn't really know any limits in conversation. He just says whatever comes to his mind. And I just found that so funny.
Yeah, I think we need at some point like I don't know, like a little shorts book or comic series just about like him in his prime. Because it's alluded to that he's like, you know, what's the nickname he's given?
The Blade of Bardotta. Yeah, we definitely need a comic series just called The Blade of Bardotta.
Yeah, exactly. Just to show him in his prime, just like, I don't even know what he'd be fighting against, because there's, you know, it's not like there's any major wars or threats going on much before the now, I don't think, in this era of the Jedi. But we've been doing something.
It was clearly something for him to get the name that he's got. He clearly did something significant.
Yeah. I mean, I think his species are meant to like live for like 300 years or something, so it could be set even quite a while ago.
Yeah, he's in a Crookian.
A youthful boy.
And they were, I didn't realise that Crookians had appeared before in Star Wars. They were in like the final few issues of the Poe Dameron comic, which Charles Soule wrote. So clearly that's where he came up with the idea of the Crookians. But they just released like a High Republic picture of what Porter Engle looks like. And I didn't really know what to think he would look like, because like the only thing that Crookies really had was that they've got like grey skin and these two like little lumps on their head, sort of like Hellboy lumps on their head, basically. And they released this picture of Porter Engle, and he's just like a big fat smiley face guy with like a beard and like long hair, and he's just like such a unintimidating looking guy. But to hear this like history of him just being an absolute savage back in the day, I'm just like, I need to find out about this one day. We need this like spin-off comic or spin-off book.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely needed in, like, I'm assuming at some point in the High Republic runs that they do. They've got to have a spin-off book or comic for this at some point.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like an anthology, maybe. I'm just like
stories
things in history. Yeah, stories that need to be told. And this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, well, we are getting, I guess it's a good segue as well. We are getting a 5-issue mini-series about Ty Yorick, about her like backstory, called Monster at Temple Peak. And it's like a 5-issue miniseries written by Cavan Scott, set before the Rising Storm, about like her going and slaying monsters, just being like a saber for hire monster hunter, learning a bit about her backstory. And she was a character that I really, really loved in this book as well. So I'm going to be interested to read that. But I just thought she was really interesting. I'm not sure what you thought about Ty Yorick, but her relationship in the book with Elzar I thought was really interesting. I think one of my favorite scenes in the book, I say this about a lot of scenes, but there's a lot of scenes I loved, was when the two of them like connected in the Force to like control the big dragons in the sky. And they had that moment where like they sort of both like completely opened up to each other, as like Ty being a character who like shut herself off for decades, and Elzar being someone who keeps everything close to his chest. And she saw like all of Elzar's memories, and like the fact that the first thing he thought about was Ava, and then she like sees the two of them fooling around as Padawans. And then obviously she opens up and Elzar sees, you know, some form of trauma from her childhood which made her leave the Jedi Order as a Padawan. Still don't really know all the details yet. Maybe the comic will cover it, or maybe we'll find out soon. But I really like that scene. I thought she was a really interesting character, sort of walking that line of like anti-hero, but then ultimately making the decision that like, even though she doesn't want to be part of the Jedi and she doesn't necessarily agree with them, like she doesn't really just want to see an entire planet killed by evil marauders. So she is going to sort of help out. And I really liked her journey in the book, and very interesting to see where they take it. I don't know what your thoughts on Ty was, you know, as one of the sort of main characters in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, this is like a very interesting sort of character that we haven't really seen in Star Wars before, like a cell, like a ex-Jedi cell sword sort of thing. But obviously, like as you said, like her backstory is just full of mystery, and we don't really know why she left the Jedi Order or like what she's been doing since. And I think one of the questions that I was at the forefront of my head when I was thinking about it was like, why has she still got her lightsaber? Because I'm pretty sure like you can't really take it with you when you leave. I'm sure I've read that somewhere that like if you retire, I think the Jedi like put it in like a ceremonial thing or something. And then obviously if you're kicked out, they just take it because they can't trust you with it. So I'm just like, how has she ended up to still have her lightsaber?
It's like a school book. You have to hand it back when you finish. You can't just take it with you.
No, you can't be wandering around the galaxy, just with the weapon that like identifies you as a Jedi, but you can do what you want with it. Like, I don't think they they approve of that.
No, definitely going to be an interesting backstory to find out about for sure. And she's got the cool purple one as well, which we always like. Bright, different colors of lightsabers. It's nice that we've got a slight. I think I sort of think it's a slightly lighter purple than Mace Windu's, but still a bit of purple in there, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I mean, another great reason that this is such an interesting era of Star Wars is that we get so many more cool colors of lightsaber. I mean, we've got the classic blue and green, but then even like classic blue and green, like we have like so many different variations of like the way the lightsabers are made. Stellan's, I think he's got like a nice little cross guard on his, like a little from like some of the pictures I've seen. Yeah. He's got a nice little cross guard on his. I mean, we got, she's got a purple one. Loden had a yellow one, or is it? Ola had a white one.
Yeah, Ola Jareni had
she's got a white double bladed
white one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just. I mean, we got that, and then we got all the different Jedis. Different alien species. There's literally something for everyone in these books.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think what else there is to talk about in this book. I mean, I know there's obviously a lot. I guess, one sort of quite an interesting bit, which I thought, in true Star Wars style, this book got into really interestingly, was the politics. I really found myself liking Lena So, the Chancellor, in this book. I thought she developed a lot in this book. Like, they developed her a lot in this book as like a really interesting character. She clearly genuinely wants the best for the galaxy and for the Republic, and she's got an immense weight on her shoulder to almost do it all herself. And then you've got little Senator Tia Toon, the Sullustan, who I thought was such an interesting character. Like, at first I was like, who is this little prick? Like, I really don't like him. But then at the end I was just like, he kind of does have a point. I mean, after everything that's happened, he kind of does have a point. I don't know what you thought of all of that, but I just, that conflict of the, whether they need their own army and how strong this spirit of unity idea really is, and whether, the Republic Fair was a good use of money to be spent when people are living in fear, and all of these sort of big questions that the book was asking, I thought were really, really interesting. Yeah,
I mean, I think it is an interesting debate, I think, between Toon and Chancellor So, because obviously on one hand, you get where she's coming from, of being like, we don't want to have an army, because then you kind of, instead of going out to planets and being like, hey, do you want to join the Republic? If you go with loads of soldiers, you obviously feel like you're invading. Or like, if you like a planet joins the Republic and then suddenly like loads of soldiers just show up to be like the police force of the planet, then it sends the wrong message and stuff. So you get where she's coming from. She wants to just rely on the Jedi to be peacekeepers and like throughout the galaxy, just be seen as, if there's a Jedi around, that you're safe, sort of thing. But as we've seen in the last few books, like, you can't just rely on the Jedi for things, because it's a big galaxy, and the way that the Republic, I suppose, is spreading itself even further out into the galaxy, there's not enough Jedi to cover the whole area. So I get where he's coming from. I think it would be definitely beneficial to the galaxy to have some sort of like army for at least the time being, obviously with the threat of the Nile. But I can see both sides. I agree with you though. I thought he was a right dick, like as at the start of the book. But then as obviously the book goes on, and you get more of the fact that he's not trying to like one up Chancellor So to be like, oh, I want the power. He's literally just doing it because he thinks that's what's right for the galaxy. And it's like, you can't really argue with, he might not agree with what he thinks, but it's still it's from a noble cause sort of thing.
Yeah, and there was that really good scene he had sort of towards the end of the book with Stellan, and he was just like, I genuinely do have the utmost respect for the Jedi, and I genuinely do love the Republic and believe in the spirit of unity, but I'm not going to give up on this fundamental thing that I believe in. And I just thought I was there when you actually heard it from that perspective and you reflected on the book, that he never was doing anything dodgy. He was never actually trying to, destroy the Republic or anything. He was just being a good politician who was trying to fight his argument. And whether you agreed with his argument or not, I think he was an interesting character, and I hope they use him more in the future, because I always think the political side of Star Wars is really interesting. I know some people don't, but I enjoy it. And I think that he was a good antagonist, not an antagonist in the sense of a villain, but he was the antagonist to Lena So, the person that she was constantly fighting against. And I thought that was just a really interesting dynamic. And particularly when sort of Lena So is trying to impress the what was her name, Yalaric Ovet, the Togruta Supreme Huntress, I think was the term that they had. And I mean, I thought that whole storyline was really interesting as well, of just like trying to get this sort of like whole other side of the galaxy, this like big sort of mini empire of their own, empire in the not imperial Palpatine sense, but this collection of planets right off in the distance, to believe in the Republic and to join the Republic. And I thought that whole storyline was really interesting, particularly because you hear Togruta and you think of Ahsoka. But I thought that was really interesting. And it's like, I think one of the best scenes from the political side was obviously when they were all cramped in that little pod going between the islands, and Tia Toon just went off on one in front of at Lena So in front of this Togruta royalty, and then she was sort of just standing there and like watching this character attack. And I just thought it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, the theme of, as you say, the theme of politics has always been throughout Star Wars. So it's nice to see that they're keeping it, in this era, and then making it, giving it a bit of like a moral grey area where it's not so like black and white. Because it's easy in a book to write like, oh, this is the good, this is the bad. But it's interesting to each person reading it can make their own decision about who they think is right. I'm sure there's some people reading it that agree with So, there's some people reading it that agree with Toon. So I think it's very well written. And I think, I hope to see it more in the future books, and I hope that he comes back as a character. Maybe he can, in the next book, he might be proved right, and he might get his defense force or defense program after the events of this book. I can see it swinging that way, to be honest.
And
maybe wanting to do more for the galaxy to keep them protected.
Yeah, and I was just really impressed that, in a book that was telling so many stories of so many different Jedi and so many villains and such a huge action scene, that they still had time to tell this like really interesting and well thought out political story, and that it wasn't just a subplot, like it was really relevant to the plot of the story, because it was the Togruta Armada that rescued them at the end when the message got out. And like the reporter was such an integral part of it as well, and getting the communication sent out to space, and the filming of everything that was happening was very important. And what Stellan's role is now going to be, because he seems very uncomfortable with this idea that he's going to be like the Chancellor's new poster boy and is going to basically be working for her, which is a little bit too close to Clone Wars era sort of Jedi Republic relations, which I think is an interesting point. And I just thought all of that worked really well for me. And aside from the fact that the Chancellor is just an awesome badass with two lions at her side, she's also a very interesting and intelligent politician. And I think that's something nice to see in Star Wars, because we normally just see like the Palpatines, the bad chancellors, but we've actually got one who's good and is trying to do some good. And she does need a little bit of help, because she might be a little too ambitious and a little too underestimating of the Nile. But hopefully, I think all the events of this book has probably changed the overall opinion of that. And I don't think they're going to underestimate the Nile again. I hope not, at least.
Yeah, I hope not. And it's as you say, it's nice to see some actual like good political debates in the Star Wars. I mean, it's always been very apparent the political sides of Star Wars, but God, some of those scenes in the prequels were like they're having some form of debate. Like, oh my God, some of them are awful. You know, like you got alien species just shouting at each other, like, nonsense, or like you have like the Trade Federation being like one side of a political group, and it's like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah, it was never really the debate so much as the characters saying it, like the Trade Federation and those awful, stereotypically insulting accents. at least here we've got some sort of interesting debates going on amongst an absolute horror show of action.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just hope they keep it up. I mean, I think, you know, you made a good point about how everything going on in the book, they still had time to fit this point in and make it relevant and not just like a small side plot you could forget about. So I think it just goes to show how well written these books are so far. I mean, you know, the three I've read have all been paced beautifully. You know, the point, everything in it is relevant. There's nothing in there that's like there to fill pages.
Yeah.
I think the High Republic at the moment is on a you know, an absolute win streak with the content that's coming out of there, and I think some of the best Star Wars we've got in many years.
Yeah. I mean, I genuinely I'm not over exaggerating when I think the Rising Storm is like, in terms of like quality of Star Wars story, you know, is up there for me with, you know, some of the original trilogy films. Like, I just thought the story of this book was so well written. The action was incredible. It felt so Star Wars, but also felt so unique and different at the same time. And I just think the characters are so well written and so likable, or in Marchion Ro's case, is well written and hateable, that I just think it just completely carries the story. Like, I just find myself connecting to these Jedi characters and some of the human characters, like the non-Jedi characters, so much more than, you know, I have with characters in the past. And that's not to take away from anything that's been done before. I just think this era is just really handling it so well. And because we're seeing characters across multiple books and, you know, comics, etc., we're getting to know them really well. And, you know, I can tell that, you know, and then another 7 books time, if he's still alive, like anytime I open up a chapter and Elzar's there, I'm just going to get really excited that I'm reading Elzar. Or Stellan was obviously a new character in this book, and I really like Stellan as well. And obviously you've got some of the sort of characters who are a little bit smaller, like Indira Stokes, but I also think she's a really, really cool and interesting character. And then, you know, this book was really good as well, and like tying in characters from like the other books. You know, like Venestra Rowe, who has appeared in the High Republic comic in A Test of Courage. She's going to be a big part of Out of the Shadows, the next book coming out. Like, Venestra sort of pops up and she's Stellan's old Padawan, so there's a little connection there. And I've also read Race to Crash Point Tower, which is like the story of how the communication tower got turned back on in this book, as opposed to the reporter sending the message out, which was something different to the actual communication comlink network getting turned back on. And that was told in like a little side story. And that was with Ram, who briefly bumps into Ty Yorick in this book when they're in the prison. So I just think that the way that they're crossing these stories over, and, you know, characters get plucked up and popped in different stories. And, you know, in this book, the Drengir were mentioned. You know, there was a chapter with the Drengir, like when Ty Yorick was fighting the Drengir, and we know that Avar Kriss and all those other Jedi aren't in this book because they're busy fighting the Drengir. But we know what's going on with the Drengir because we're reading the comic series, and, you know, it's sort of explained and caught up, but really it's just like something really rewarding of like, oh yeah, we're getting that Drengir story, which is happening at the same time as this in the comic. And then this book, we're dealing with a Nile. I'm loving it. Really, really love this book. And desperately excited for the next, well, all the stories that are going to come up after this, but particularly The Fallen Star, which is the next adult novel written by Claudia Gray, which has me very excited. I'm sure it has you excited as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to ask this. I know the answer is going to be in a long time, but when actually is that book out? Is it like end of next year? Have I got to wait that long?
No, January
January
2022. So yeah, we've got 6 months to wait, I guess. Yeah, 6 months. 5 months.
Well, I mean, that's not too bad, especially
it's not too far.
Especially with the stuff that's going to come out in between.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've still got to catch up with the comic series at the moment. I need to finish reading those issues.
Yeah, there's Tempest Runners coming out at the end of this month, which is the audio drama written by Cavan Scott about Lorna D, the Niall Twi'lek, very scary character.
Okay.
So that's to come as well. And there's a new comic series starting in October called Trail of Shadows, which is like a Jedi noir. I mean, there's a lot still to come. So I don't think we're going to get any... I don't think we're going to be missing the High Republic at all over the next few months.
No, it doesn't sound like there's going to be any like lull in content between now and the next adult novel, which I am all here for, and I will be absorbing every single bit of it probably.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my copy of Out of the Shadows arriving in the next few days, which is going to be the next book that I'm going to read, which is the young adult novel of this phase, which picks up quite a few of the storylines from Into the Dark, which is the last young adult novel, which me and you are both big fans of. So it's going to be a lot more Reef Silas and a lot more Comac Vitus, and some of the Niall characters appear again in that book. And the reviews are all saying that that's another great book as well. So I'm excited to read that one for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, I might have to order that on Amazon, see how quickly that can get here. Well, whenever it comes out, I assume.
Yeah, well, I think it's tricky to get on Amazon because I think they've got a stock issue, but I managed to get a copy on WH Smith because they had Amazon had delayed my delivery till like October. And I was like, that's not good enough. I want it now. But it was on WH Smith. So I've managed to get a copy, which I'm looking forward to reading. And it's just going to be another nice High Republic book up on my shelf. My collection is slowly growing.
You're going to need a new shelf soon.
Exactly. I'm going to have a shelf which is just going to be High Republic stuff eventually, which is exactly what I want. But yeah, have you got anything else you want to add in terms of the Rising Storm?
No, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, to be honest, I think we could probably sit here and talk about it for another 2 hours. But I think for the main stuff, I think that's all covered. And I think my thoughts are out there. And basically, to sum up, is if you haven't read the book or, you are debating whether to get into the High Republic still, go buy it and go read it and go read it all. Because it's some of the best Star Wars content we've gotten in a long time.
Yeah, I can echo that as well. I absolutely love the book. Continuing to love this era of Star Wars a lot. I mean, I'm starting to get to the point where the High Republic might just be my favorite era of Star Wars, just in general. I mean, I'm absolutely loving all of it. This book's been absolutely fantastic. As I said, I've read it once and I've listened to it once, and both times I would absolutely love the book, even though it made me sad and in a lot of pain and anguish. It really is great action, great characters. If you love Jedi, you will love these books because it's just the most interesting and relatable Jedi characters we've had in a long time. And as soon as there is an Elzar Man Funko Pop, I'm going to buy 30 of them and create a shrine because he's my new favorite character now. Because not only is Elzar Man a great Jedi, he's also a shagger. So we have to appreciate Elzar Man, the man.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even thought about the merchandise that's going to come along with the imminent, apparent success of this era of Star Wars. Star Wars has always been one of those things for action figures, etc., collectibles, etc. So I'm anxiously waiting.
At the moment, I'm furious that we haven't even had a Funko announcement. I want Funkos. The only bit of merchandise available is t-shirts, and there is a really nice t-shirt with like the Republic Fair poster on it, which I'm very tempted to buy. But yeah, if there was a Funko range with like Elzar, Stellan, Bell, Loden, Avar, Skier, I'd be buying all of them. A lot of money would be spent. A geode. I want a geode. Funko Pop. I've said it before and I'll say it again.
Christ, that'd be unbelievable. Take my money.
Right. Well, thank you very much for listening to this. Probably a bit longer than normal episode of Live from Vaders Castle. It's been our book club episode talking about The Rising Storm by Cavan Scott. And I'm sure much of the High Republic stuff we will continue to talk about in the podcast for many weeks to come. So if you're a fan of the High Republic and you enjoyed our discussion today and want to hear more, then keep up to date with our podcast for more High Republic discussions. And next week will be a big Bad Batch centric episode, because we obviously had the brilliant episode 15 of the Bad Batch out the other day, which we are not discussing until next week, when we have that and the finale to sort of talk about at the same time. But me and John love the episode that just came out, so we're excited to talk about it and hopefully talk about a brilliant finale as well. So that's what you've got to look forward to. And you can follow our podcast on all your podcasting apps. It's just Live from Vaders Castle. And you can follow us on Instagram at Live from Vaders Castle as well. We've been putting some great stuff up on the Instagram recently, haven't we, John? If you want to see all our Lego exploits, there's all sorts of stuff over on our Instagram to check out.
Yeah, I mean, there's some clean Lego book posts on the Instagram at the moment. So if you're interested in that sort of Star Wars stuff, head over there and have a look.
Yep. And then we're also on Twitter at Vaders Castle Pod. So yeah, check us out on all our social medias. Oh, and TikTok as well. We do have a TikTok at Live from Vaders Castle as well. Was it Live from Vaders Castle Pod? Something like that. I did a little TikTok the other day because I'm trying to be a young whippersnapper and try to figure out how you get views on that platform, because that seems to be like a big place at the moment. So I did a little thing about the High Republic. So maybe we'll do more stuff on TikTok soon. Who knows? It's still a little bit too. Both of us are kind of boomers, so it's a bit difficult to get to grips with it.
Yeah. Boom.
Right. Well, that's been the episode. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for being here as always, John. Another great discussion in the bag.
Yeah, it was a great discussion. I very much enjoyed that, and I hope you guys listening too did as well. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week. Bye.
Bye.